buyer tells me a little bit ahead of time, hey, we're doing this, and I'm aware and just kind of, aware of it. And then when they tell me, yes, here are the new terms, I got to draft that very, very quickly. I have to make it very, very simple.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. I've got a great guest today because we're seeing a lot of retrades going on in the marketplace. And so I've got Ronald Brodie. He's a commercial real estate. Well, I guess, are you a broker too, or you're just an attorney?
No, I'm licensed, but I'm more of an industrial investor and
Okay.
lawyer.
Okay. And we're going to be talking about buyer amendments and the process of retrades, because I think this is something that everybody needs to really get a good understanding of, because we're seeing it in a good amount in the marketplace. So thank you for coming on today, Ronald.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it's good to be with you.
Well, thank you. The retrades, starting to see it a lot. People are getting into escrow.
And look, I mean, I think it's absolutely a zero-sum game. It's good if you're a buyer, and it's not
Mhm.
great if you're a seller. But this market is producing fewer transactions, right? Everybody knows that is lower volume. But the deals that are going through, buyers understand that they have more leverage than in the past. And that is true from pre-PSA and LOI period to all the way up until closing. So,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. As a broker, it's our job to take the emotion out of the deal, right? And I find that some of the agents we talk to, they're getting to where they get a little bit greedy because now they've got the sellers on the hook, and, they think, oh, there's not another buyer out there. Are you seeing that as a problem out there right now? Or most of the brokers being pretty, level headed and like, let's just looking for a winning opportunity for everybody?
yeah, and I think when I was preparing for this interview and I was kind of thinking, I wanted to break down the retrades into two categories.
Okay.
And the first category is a genuine discovery or some material event that has changed what the buyer's value of the property is. And these can be anything, right? These can be tenant financials change a little bit, or they do a quarterly earnings that's terrible. It could be some type of law that's passed restricting this, or some type of zoning issue.
Yeah.
Material things that potentially decrease the value from the buyer. And it's common, these things happen. The difference, call it a year ago or 2 years ago, was that wasn't enough theoretical loss to justify an actual price reduction, but they were propagated, or they were started by real things, discovery during due diligence. Maybe you're still in your DD phase, so you can terminate, but the value is just not quite exactly there in terms of the risk that the buyer wants to take for their equity to sign up, for this pretty big commitment. And so maybe things warranted 100K, 200K, something like that, that was meaningful of a reduction, but not going to necessarily tank the deal and take it from a 5.5 cap to a 6 cap, not something huge. And then the other category of retrades, I will say, are maybe more discretionary. And these are things that I've I've experienced. I haven't been investing in too terribly long, but I've been through '08. I was an attorney in '08. 2013 to some degree had that. And then there are also buyers just retrading solely for the purpose of pushing the price down.
Yeah.
And we can call that opportunistic. You can call that buyers, being a fiduciary to their investors and really trying to get the best price. But those are the two categories. And I want to distinguish between those two because it's helpful to understand when I say, what are the brokers doing? On the material ones, I think that they're really getting behind their clients. There's a lot of, let's make this work. We don't want to lose the deal because this is a material change. If it's one of these retrades of, you've got no other offers, I just want to pay less because
Yeah.
I can, and I'm perfectly willing to terminate and get my earnest money back or something, and the seller is just sweating because they've got a loan refinancing coming up in 8 months and they don't know what they're going to do, and they're like, man, this guy has tied me up for 45 days, for 60 days. I don't want to go back on the market and potentially lose another deal. That's opportunistic retrade. And that's what I think people don't like. I think that as buyers and investors in this market, we always say the price we go under contract is the price we're going to close at. I think that's important for people's reputations. So to come back to your question, what are the brokers? If there has been a material discovery, and it could be anything, even if it doesn't necessarily impact the NOI today, if it theoretically is a material impact in the future, brokers are trying to save the deal. I think
Yeah.
they want some commission is better than nothing, but also they're acknowledging the reality of we don't know what the interest rates are going to be in 6 months. You don't know what they're going to be a month from now. So the sellers are really taking a gamble, especially on that cap rate and cost of debt. If they're not necessarily only all cash buyers, it's a real gamble what that debt cost is going to be. And so it's better to, close the deal with somebody
Sure.
who's already there. So the brokers are very working. That said, if I have some greedy buyers, I don't know, greed makes money, but
Yeah.
if they're opportunistically looking to just cut the price for the sake of it, the brokers will push back. I think you guys have a strong alignment with your client's interest in saying, like, we don't want to do it just on principle. Of course, I want to get paid, but I want to close the deal at the price that I told you your property is worth. And so we see a lot of pushback in those kind of opportunistic deals. Sellers are not desperate. Sellers, for the most part, can hold on to their stuff and they don't want to deal with the refinance, but they will do it instead of, quote, giving away their property.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I asked the question because I was on a call this morning and it was a seller and he goes, your brokers are just being greedy. I said, they just want to get a deal done, to be honest with you. This is what the buyer is requesting. And so, a lot of sellers are out there who really put on the brokerage community. And I'm not really seeing that. I mean, I think it's, we're wanting to get deals done. We want to make these transactions happen. So with the clients that you're working with right now, Ronald, how long have you seen? How many fall? Have you been seeing a lot of deals falling out of escrow right now?
I would say no. I mean,
Okay.
certainly we terminate maybe 10%, and maybe that's higher
Okay.
than in the past. Well, you think 10% is high or low?
No, I thought that was pretty low, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that people that are going under contract are closing. What is different about this market is just that they're coming to a realization or an agreement on the price ahead of time.
Yeah.
So buyers are a lot more skeptical pre-PSA because they don't have that sense of urgency, right? If you
Right.
bring me a deal and I look at it, I take a day to kind of underwrite, I can think about it and I don't have to jump over myself to submit an LOI and tell you my best and final within 48 hours of you getting this paper. I
Right.
can probably sit on. And so as a result, I think buyers feel more comfortable once they're going into contract and it's sticking through and it's going all the way to closing.
Yeah. Are you finding that they're starting to do the amendments to the PSA earlier on, just to be safe? Do you think they're waiting deeper into the transaction before they start asking for an amendment or a time extension?
Yeah, well, I have a great lawyer answer for that, and the answer is it depends. It
Yeah.
depends. What I
Well,
was gonna
it
say
does.
though
It
is
depends on the market, the
yeah,
seller,
it
the buyer.
depends
Yeah.
on what it's for. Absolutely, we're doing more amendments, and this was kind of my point. I think another lawyer was asking me, like, how's business? And I said, well, transactions are down. There's no doubt the
Sure.
number of transactions is down. However, I think our legal fees are actually going up because they're more complicated and we're charging more per deal, and the net result is actually more legal revenue because A, buyers are more careful, and B, we're doing more things like an escrow holdback, we're doing seller
Mm,
financing, we're doing different contingencies, we're doing due diligence extensions just to finish off some report, not quite like a phase two, but something on the PCA comes back, the property condition analysis, or
yeah.
we just want to be sure we're going to double check this system because the report says he couldn't really inspect into that unit and we need a specialized
Mm,
elevator guy to tell us if the elevator is really good. So we're going to do an amendment, just for 10 days.
yeah.
Keeping DD alive, we're going to pay for this extra report to do a DD on the elevator. So those I would say are early. And then on the other hand, we're seeing a lot of things, extensions and different escrow solutions at the wire, but that's to save a deal.
Yeah.
That's when things start to kind of go sideways. Maybe financing isn't quite what they expected, and they need a price reduction to get the DSCR, and then maybe the lender will do a subordinated second. There's all sorts of things that are happening closer to the wire that buyer and sellers attorneys, they need to be on the same page, because, I think the buyers are being genuine, right? It's like, hey,
Sure.
appraisal didn't come back, or the lender is I didn't rate lock, and the lender's debt just went up, the last 25 basis points. That's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff where you talk to your lender and like, okay, we're rate locked. And then they say, well, we can't do a rate lock, but yeah, you're probably good at 7.25. And then now they quote them 7.5. And you go back to the seller and you're like, man, look at this email. Look at my lender. He's just really screwing me over. What do we do? And the seller's like, I'll take back some paper. I can reduce the purchase price a little bit. What do we need to do to save the deal? Because they know that the next buyer is going to have the exact same type of problem. So,
Yeah. So you're extending are you extending a good number of escrows out right now?
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I won't say it's guaranteed or given,
Right.
but 80%, 90% are getting some extension. If we're not putting automatic extensions in at the PSA, outset. So that's always been kind of common, but I would say it's every deal.
Sure.
Every buyer wants to go through the little bit of negotiation of, what does it cost for me to extend this by how long? And what does it cost for me to extend closing by this and how long?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's every deal. And then we may even be, if we exercise one, they may want to have some option, to push on something else later.
Sure. One thing that we're dealing with right now is a seller came in and bought, or a buyer came in and bought a property, and he bought it under his own name. Now he's changing it to an LLC. And so that's been a process. And it's now all of a sudden the seller's got a little bit nervous for some reason. But the documents that they signed prior to assigning the name to the LLC, um, would we have to go back and change those?
I mean, it would be part of either an amendment or an assignment. And the reason there's a difference between those two, an amendment can just be a swap of, complete change relating back to the original execution date. It's almost like the individual's name doesn't even exist and didn't
Right.
exist in this transaction. That's an amendment. Versus if they want to exercise a right or requesting a consent for an assignment, typically that assignment will be just a limited assignment, and the original, executing party is still on the hook.
Yeah.
So it's an assignment, and you as a buyer kind of have to decide, we have one of two tools to solve the problem. Which one is best? I think an amendment is better, but it necessitates seller consent to sign an amendment, versus what are the buyer's rights to an assignment. And then those have pros is no seller consent or, execution needed. And the cons, maybe the individual is still on the hook there. And it all comes down to the risk. And does the buyer think he's going to terminate? Does he think he's going to give rise to anything that the seller might, not be happy with him? So.
Yeah.
Well, I've went for the advice about how to do a retrade, whether it's justified or opportunistic. I'll answer my own question, but
Yeah.
the best advice about how to execute is make sure that you prep your attorney a little bit ahead of time, because I think this is one instance where speed is absolutely critical. And I know your real estate attorney, he's busy, he responds, they don't always get you everything. When you're doing a retrade, whether it's good or bad, speed is critical, that you don't want to slow it down with a bunch of legalese, because you've got to strike as quickly when the seller agrees, like mentally. This is all psychological, but I found the best ones are, buyer tells me a little bit ahead of time, hey, we're doing this, and I'm aware and just kind of, aware of it. And then when they tell me, yes, here are the new terms, I got to draft that very, very quickly. I have to make it very, very simple and accurate, as accurate as it can be. But then we've got to be able to push that out to the seller so they can sign while the iron is hot. And that's maybe the only situation that I think you really have to push for speed, because it does matter. Sometimes they sit on it too long and they change their mind and they haven't signed it.
Well, yeah, in LA, typically the broker negotiates the retrade, right? Would we be wise? And I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it come from an attorney. Would we be wise to bring an attorney on during that process instead of after that process?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, I
look, it's
knew it.
always useful to have us ahead of time. We're
Yeah.
going to be up to speed and not under the gun. But I mean, tell me about your transactions too. Are you guys using like the air forms, the air CRE, or?
I don't do the day to day anymore, but yes, they are using AIR
Yeah.
forms, and they've had good success with them.
Yeah. So I mean, I see that it's common. And again, in California, the transactions are different. So for anybody, we don't do California transactions, but we will do nationwide other transactions. And it all just depends on what your PSA looks like. If it's a form contract, you're generally going to be more limited, but maybe simpler options, versus if you have a custom PSA and maybe your attorney has drafted that and they're familiar with it, you get a lot more flexibility to qualify things or put exceptions in the documents that are really pretty beneficial, I think, from your perspective. If you
Sure.
think you're going to be exercising different clauses in your PSA, make it a custom form and make sure your attorney has talked to you about it. In that way, you're going to know what your options are as you proceed towards closing.
Great advice. Well, Ronald, thank you very much for today. I appreciate it. How do we get hold of you?
Best way is find me on YouTube, Ronald Brodie Law, RONALD Law, LAW. I post every week on YouTube, and happy to help people, with their industrial investments, because that's what I do when I'm not doing commercial real estate for my day job. I'm doing it as an investment. And yeah.
Yeah. Ronald, I will actually put your YouTube channel down below so they can contact you there or go subscribe. Thank you for coming on today.
Awesome. Likewise, Joe.
Yeah. And for those of you watching, make sure you give us a like. And if you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe.